Hello and welcome to this painting session where I'm going to show you my pictures of inspiration and how I actually paint this particular scene. This video is going to be a little longer one, and I haven't really gone ahead and speeded up the video because if someone's painting this, you can actually follow whatever I'm doing and replicate almost something that I will be painting and showing you. So, this scene is of the pathway that I always take where there are a lot of trees, and it's almost the end of summer, so you can see some of the trees are actually changing their color but not completely into the fall. I love the shades of the leaves and the foliage that gives beauty to the skies. Though we see very little sky in this, I still laid out a little bit of blue on the left side. So, this is a beautiful painting, and the palette that I have chosen for this is the cobalt blue. I have also used sap green, ultramarine blue, the lemon yellow, a little bit of yellow ochre, and Payne's gray. If you don't have Payne's gray, you can always substitute it for something like indigo, but just make sure that you use that in a minimal wash because sometimes indigo can be a little too strong. I want the colors to be nice and warm with a splash of purple and blue, as you will see. I use purple for the pathway and the little bit of blue for the sky. So, in this initial wash, I began with painting very fluid washes, just the basic wash, this as light as you can go, and the imagination is I'm walking into the painting. And that's what I've always said. I always like to walk into my paintings because that's the way you create an interest for the viewer. I don't like to block their view, want them to really enter into the painting because you visualize yourself in that particular scene. So I'm laying out very light washes. The sketch is a simple one. I'm going to actually link the sketch for you in the description so you can also use that. It's a very basic one where I've given you some um, pencil markings for the trees and the pathway. And the sky is obviously painted here, but that's not going to be the focus at the end of the painting. So you'll realize that the pathway and the right side tree and some of the flowers that I lay are going to be the ones that are going to be in focus. So I've taken the lightest of the greens, lightest of the blues, lightest of the yellows, and laid them in on the paper. So when I mean lightest, it's obviously going to be more water and very little paint. So I'm going ahead and adding the purple. That is a mix of the alizarin crimson and ultramarine blue, and sometimes I mixed it up with the cobalt blue to create a little bit of an interest in terms of the kinds of colors and blending, which I love about watercolors because they blend and they settle down and they create those beautiful hues, one mingling into another. Do not try to unify the color because we want those colors to settle as is. So I'm going to let this dry for a few minutes and then I'm going to begin painting the trees. I use this splatter technique very often in my paintings. It could be floral paintings or landscapes like this, where I like to flick some of these splatters of paint on the paper in a random way, and some of them can be large, some of them can be small, and I go back in there with a brush and try to smudge that paint so I get a good effect of the both the worlds, where I'm changing the shape of these splatters, trying to make them a little transparent and leaving some of them as is. So I get that beautiful blend of splatters and smudges. I'm coming in there again with the lightest yellow, more water again, but a little less than the previous layers. So I'm laying in those dabs of paint on the areas on the right side. This is a combination of yellow ochre, it could be little bit of the lemon yellow, and the sap green. If you get a little more of the paint, that's fine. So remember, when you are tapping in those darker colors, they have to be more towards the underside of the large blobs of green, because that's how I like to indicate shadow. I'm working on the foreground right now. In several of my techniques, I like to switch between areas in the painting to allow the paints to dry and then work on another section and then go back and work on the first layers of paint. So, this gives me a good opportunity to think as well as change colors and brush strokes to my advantage, rather than fiddling only one area and messing it up. I like to take those little breaks, and I encourage anyone trying to paint to give themselves a little bit of liberty and take those breaks. Breaks are good because it gives you a reset to go in there and apply the paints, and you're able to see the painting with a new perspective. So I'm going to be using darker values of colors here. I want them to be blending one into another. So do not worry if your washes blend one into another, because that's what watercolors are all about. And when you're painting trees like this, do not worry about the form or the textures you're creating, because in this we are wanting to create that effect, because there is less sunlight and more of the shade that we are actually painting in this particular scenery. I chose to paint the trees on the left side and go up to the skies and the horizon, much beyond the horizon, in a really dark green. So I used more of the blues mixed with the sap green and created this kind of a green. If you like, you can add even more blue if you like, but I like it the way it's just taking away the interest from the right side of the painting because it lets you get into that zone of the pathway which creates that coziness as you walk into the picture. So I wanted the left side to be dark as opposed to the right side. So, as you can see here, I'm trying to create depth in the painting. I'm applying darker tones in the foliage and I add form to the background trees with some burnt sienna or even yellow ochre mixed with the brown that I have. The variegated washes that I created in the initial background phase is going to be as is. I don't want to meddle with that because if I go and apply paint to that, I can have washes that are not going to settle well. We're going to have something called as puddling, and I cannot fix that, or I don't want to add more water to any of the areas that are already dried. But I suggest that you can also use a napkin in case you overdo the colors. But very carefully, I'm adding in the sap green and adding in a little bit of ultramarine, French ultramarine or an ultramarine. And then I'm moving very carefully from one area to the other and also applying it with some Payne's gray. And I'm going to repeat this whole process for the foliage on the left side. I'm addressing trees that are really in full foliage because it's not yet autumn. So, as I said, they're enjoying the summer breeze and loving this entire atmosphere that we are creating and the sunlight. So, very carefully, I am using just lines, some light, some dark, to indicate the branches and the trunks of the tree. When we are painting the trunks of the trees, I like to use yellow ochre. Otherwise, you can also use sepia, Van Dyke brown, mixed with a little bit of indigo, Payne's gray. These are the color combinations I like when I'm painting the tree trunks. The tree trunks are again going to show up in the picture according to the source of the light. For this painting, I'm imagining the light is somewhere in the middle of the painting or a little more towards the right side because my shadows are going to be on the left side. And also, the kind of colors that the foliage is going to turn out is going to be darker if there is no light. I'm working on the foliage that's on the ground. So we are dealing with bushes, we're dealing with grasses, and a little bed that is elevated from the pathway. So I love to create different kind of brush strokes, a little angular, so that we can indicate the shape of the landscape rather than just having it absolutely flat. If you like, you can also use just horizontal strokes, but in perspective to the pathway. Just along the way of painting, I realized there were too many greens that I was dealing with, and I wanted a little more punch in the painting, so I decided to add a little bit of blue. Typically, I don't do this. Maybe it was my, you know, miscalculation that I didn't paint that area more blue in the initial stage that we were painting the upper part of the painting, the sky. And but I'm going in and adding those blues over there. I don't suggest this, but I'm doing that. But it's absolutely fine because with the atmosphere and the way the trees are, the lights, we do get trees looking blue and it's all fine. So if you are dealing with something like this, don't be afraid. Don't abandon your painting. It's all good. It's just going to look gorgeous. And I love colors. So I have blues, I have yellows, purples, greens, and browns in this painting. And I also added the white flowers along the pathway. When you reach the end of the painting, you will see I love adding those little um, charming little bits to the painting. And that's how I deal with it when I'm painting. Nothing is fixed, just go with the flow. You can take your call along the painting as you like, and you don't have to paint exactly like the way I'm doing it. You can change the pathway, you can play around with the trees, you can add different kinds of bushes, You can play around with a variety of trees. You can make more evergreens. You can have deciduous. Those are the ones which have a lot of leaves, and those are the ones actually, the leaves that fall in abundance, and that's what creates the whole effect of autumn in the Western Hemisphere. You can just use the entire layout and but switch up all these little elements. You can change up the colors and change the entire tone of the painting into a completely full blown autumn scene where you're going to be using more yellows, reds, and oranges. So feel free to do that. This is the way I love to paint. I love switching up my brushes. For the pathway, I'm using my thick mop brush because I like those nice clean washes that I cannot achieve with a tinier brush. So switch up the brushes, switch up your angles of brush strokes. There's all of these things add up to the painting, and work on your arm movements, be loose. So that's how you get movement into a painting. With most of our landscapes, and especially when I am painting a pathway, I love to add some kind of liveliness with the grasses. So I've taken a size 6 brush, a round one, and I'm just flicking the tip of the brush from a downstroke to the top, like just a movement, very casual, to indicate the grasses. So I'm going to be using this technique to for the other areas in the painting to create a little more of depth and the land formations to give an interest to the whole painting. So that's how the entire painting has come so far. I'm darkening some of the branches on the right side, making sure I go thin as it's going up because those are the branches, the trunks are nice and thick. Nothing has to be in uniformity, nothing has to be symmetric, just random lines, but make sure that you don't overdo it. Now comes the fun part. I'm actually adding in those beautiful, lovely daisies, but I've changed up the color to an orange center. You can have it yellow, you can have it red, but I decided to add the orange centers for these flowers. I'm using the white gouache paint. It is actually the PH Martin's bleed proof white, which I absolutely love. It is so beautiful and opaque. It makes for a great choice when we are painting these kind of little flowers. If you don't like this, you can also mask and keep those areas white and then paint the centers. But for now, since I didn't plan this initially and I felt this would add a beautiful charm to this painting, I decided to add these flowers in the foreground. I'm not overdoing it. Remember that the ones closer to you are going to be a little larger, the ones away from you are going to be tiny little dots, almost so tiny that you can't see them. And I'm not exactly repeating the same thing on the left side because I do not want to take away the interest from the right side of the painting. But I am suggesting that there are flowers along the way of the other pathway. So, this is the way I love to add a little bit of charm and delight to any painting, because when we look at a painting, it has to be something which is so delightful and create a sense of happiness. And that's what I'm trying to achieve in this. It has lovely colors which are all mingling, very nice. The palette was limited, except that I added the white and the Windsor orange for the flowers. So there you have it. It's a wonderful little painting. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have enjoyed painting it and showing it to you. Take it easy, use the sketch that I'm providing in the description, play around with the colors, and as long as you get the pathway and the branches and the trunk of the tree, and also play around with the greens, change up the foliage and the brush strokes for the leaves, and then the greenery on the um, flower beds or on the along the pathway, so you're able to create that kind of a different effect. So we don't want uniformity. So with this, it's all for now. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed, and please leave your comments because I love to listen to what you're saying, because every day is all about learning and improving. Thank you once again.